So next up, we have News and Views S-Scale, the Mifflin Interlocking Tower, Part 1 by our very own Jamie Bothwell, NewTrack's mentor modeler. Jamie, welcome to the show again, and thank you for your continuing support and presentations.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks. Try to help out. All right, so let's jump right in here. So Tower Part 1. Bit of a story here. This kit started off as an HO model because a friend of mine was really hot to get a model of Mifflin Tower. He modeling Mifflin, Pennsylvania on his layout, and he wanted Mifflin Tower. So I said, okay, fine, I'll make you a Mifflin Tower. And then I had another friend who's an HO modeler. So I thought, well, if I'm building one for Paul, I better build one for, if I'm building one for, yeah, for Paul, I better build one for Bill. So I made two of them. But then after the first one, I changed my construction method a little bit. So I started on a third one. So I had three Mifflin Towers. So by the time I got done with it, Bill was no longer a model railroader. He decided to sell off and move on with his life. So he's not in the model. So he didn't want a Mifflin Tower. So now I have these two other ones that are sitting around waiting to be finished. They have windows at some point. I don't glue them in and then I put them down somewhere and I got to find them again. And a lot of times it's easier to just cut a whole new set. So I do that. And then there's roofs and everything. So just one of these days it's like trim work of what I've got to do. Like all the you can see there's this piece under what would be under the roof, and then there's sort of matches around like the level of the bay window. So I got to put that little sort of false roof on there. Anyway, but and then I don't know what I'm going to do with them because I'm not an HO guy. So here's the S scale version. Okay, so that's cut out of 16th inch plywood on the laser. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, I don't own a laser. What am I going to do? Okay. My daughter tells me, my daughter lives in Delaware. She says to me, her local library has a laser that you can go use. So, if you look around, there are places you could make your own laser cut kits, right? So, you don't have to own a laser to be able to use a laser, right? And it's really very simple. If you look at this building, it's really just a bunch of rectangles, right? So, you draw a big rectangle for the front wall, and then you draw some other rectangles for the windows and so on and so forth, right? And then you figure out how you're going to put it together. But it's all about thinking in layers and drawing rectangles. So this is, and as an example of that, this is the front of the bay window. Um, and so you can see that there's a layer of the plywood underneath, say like you're only seeing the little squares underneath that are the plywood. And then this piece on the top is a piece of laser board. Laser board's a resin impregnated paper product. It's great stuff. Okay. All right, so there's shows you the sort of the construction of the the whole thing really, but using the bay window as the example. Okay, so here's your center of your bay window. That was just cut today. I cut one and I didn't like it. It was some of the partitions between the windows were a little outsized. They weren't all the same. So I went back and recut one. And so these are the two sides of the bay window. Now what I do is I run these through a table saw at a 45-degree angle. And so then they get a nice bevel if I want to do that. Now the walls of the building itself are just butt jointed because what's going to happen is that this piece over here, you see this is the trim layer. This is painted in the brown color that it will be. That trim layer will hide the joints. And I would have done the same thing with the bay window, but what happened was uh, um, I didn't cut if I was going to if I was going to butt joint them, I should have changed the size and the position of the window to accommodate the thickness of the wall, and I didn't do that. So I just ran them through the table saw and cut them off at a 45-degree angle. So let's see, big over here. Okay. So there's the front piece. Again, that piece wasn't painted yet. I have a couple of them that are painted. I didn't paint this one because when I was looking at it, what happened was there was a bar across here, but it just didn't really fit. It really should have been a little lower. And not wanting to waste, 50 cents worth of laser board, I just cut it off, and I'm just going to put a new bar in across here when I'm done. So that's how that's going to work out. So. Most of that gets covered by the bay window really should come down to about here. The first one I cut just had a hole for the bay window, and you would have had to step over the wall to get out into the bay window. And so I cut this one to be a little, I couldn't figure out where the wall, where the floor should have been. How high should the floor have been in this? So I just went with that. So here's the piece with the painted trim laid in place. This is the side. I haven't glued this yet, but this is what it's going to look like. So that's the painted building and the painted trim. I'm questioning my choice of colors on the building. I don't know. Of course, I'm sure every railroad's like this, but people want to fight about what color is supposed to be the color. And but I've used this one and I've been reasonably happy with it. So I'm thinking about keeping it, but I'm looking into some other ones. So I haven't really glued the trim on yet, but that's sort of my next step is to glue the trim onto the sides. So here's the windows. Okay, that's most of the windows for the kit. And I think I mentioned this once before, but I've cut windows in the past and I bring them home and they're just a little bit too big. And I go, yeah, I could sand these things, or I could just go cut more. So usually I just cut more windows. And then this picture here shows you how the windows are actually constructed. This one is, if you'll notice the other windows had more panes. These are the ones for the basement or the main floor, the ground floor, and they're just like double hung single pane windows. So you can see that the original, there's a big rectangle. You cut out a big rectangle and then you cut out a smaller rectangle that fits over the top, and then you glue it together so you get that two-layer effect. So I've got that's the same with the other windows too. I just This was the one I happened to grab for a close-up. So here's the roof. This is the main roof of the building. So what I do is I tape them together with masking tape. Okay, so I get the roof, positioned where I want it to be, and then I just flip it over and run wood glue around the inside of it and just let it sit there till it dries. And that makes a pretty sturdy roof. Now for this one, I wanted to make some braces for the roof. So what I did was I took my handy angle roof measure, sorry, my angle measuring ruler, and I measured the angle of the roof. And you can see from my drawing there, it came out to 122 degrees. So that makes a 61-degree angle. Now here's a little trick for you. What I did was I cut this piece on a miter saw, but it would only go out as far as 50 degrees. So I set it down to the 29 degrees, which would have been the complement of the 61, and then I cut it on the end of the stick instead of the side. So instead of, if you can imagine like a 1x4, instead of putting the 1-inch face against the fence, I put the 4-inch face against the fence, and of course I put another piece of wood against it, so I had a little bit more bracing to hold it square. And there's the pieces that I cut. Now, that was a piece of 3/4 inch pine. And so what I did was I made it and then I ran it through the table saw and cut it into two pieces of whatever, 3/8 inch pine or whatever thickness it is anymore. And then I'm going to use those two as roof supports. And you can see it worked out pretty well. All right. I got a pretty good cut on that. So my angle measuring ruler is quite effective. So that's what's going to go on there, and then those are going to fit. Those notches, of course, will fit into the walls of the building, and that'll sort of hold everything in place. So that's my plan. Okay, and that's what I got for tonight. Thank you. Let's stop the share.
That's coming along great, Jamie. And how do you cut little pieces? You have a modeler's table saw or use a
No,
big?
I got a big old table saw.
I
All
guess
right.
you and Phil have more cahoons than I do. I hate cutting those little pieces on my big
Well,
table saw.
well, the little ones, you use a push stick,
I know, but I'm always
and
afraid of kicking away.
yeah, I was my the wood shop teacher's my buddy, and I was like, the push sticks, I don't like those things. He has the one of the projects he has the kids make. It's like a closed handle. It's not just like a
Yeah.
stick. It's like an actual handle. He says just run them through the saw, and you just run them through, and they just cut. You just cut a hole where the push stick is, and it's no big deal.
You and
So
Phil was using my big bad table saw, cutting little pieces, and I wanted to make sure he kept all his fingers, no problem.
yeah, well, actually, the saw we have is a saw stop. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Hmm.
They are the neatest thing. You put your finger in there.
Oh, yes, one of those. Yeah, yeah.
I cut my finger and stopped the saw with before I even knew I had done it. The
Hmm.
nick in my finger was so small I didn't even know I'd cut my finger. And all it cost was $90.
Well, I should investigate that. I've only
Yeah.
had two kickbacks in 25 years, but
Well,
it's
this
amazing.
they can still kick back, but you can't cut your fingers off.
Yeah. I
So
think you're doing a great job with that model, and I don't know what you're going to do with the HO ones. I'm sure somebody would be
yeah,
interested.
pass them off to somebody, whatever. So yeah, and truthfully, I don't have any real need for Mifflin Tower on my layout, any planned layout that I have, truthfully. What happened was the tube in the laser died, and so it took me almost a year to get a new tube. So I just thought, well, I better, throw something in there that I could test out. And when I went to the convention this summer, there was a guy, a friend of mine had built a model of Jack's tower that I had laser cut for him and given to him. He had it in the contest room, and I thought, dang, I'm gonna, that I gotta build an interlocking tower myself. So that was sort of a it was sort of a rechristen the laser, make sure everything's working okay, and go from there. So
Well,
anyway, I
one,
I got another pretty cool project I'm working on too, but I'll share that one at a later date. So
regarding the coloring, you visited my layout, and the that light brown, dark brown is what I have on my John Allen engine house. And that's a nice look, but also I have the dark brown and a yellow, which is a typical color for those things as well,
yeah,
So
the Pensy was sort of that, tan brown
yeah,
combo. They had a couple of standard color schemes, but the one you see most often is the tan and the brown.
yeah. Well, thank you again, and appreciate it.